Hello and welcome to On the Table. We're broadcasting our RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel 123, which is also live streaming on Facebook. I'm your host, Otto Othman. To another episode of On the Table. Today, we'll discuss about sustainable economic growth with multi-year tax calendar. Now, with us today is Mr. Harvinder Singh, Council Member of Chartered Tax Institute of Malaysia. So, welcome to the program, and once again, welcome to On the Table.
Thank you very much, Otto. It's great to be here.
Now, Mr. Harvinder, it is felt that for Malaysia to achieve sustainable economic growth, especially when it comes to resilience, it needs to move away from reactive year-on-year fiscal or tax adjustments. So to achieve this, a structured and practical, let's say, multi-year tax calendar is a very potential solution for us. So your thoughts, firstly, Mr. Harvinder.
Thank you, Otto. When we talk about a multi-year tax calendar, we are basically talking about, it's a long-term roadmap where we talk about moderate or gradual tax increases that are they become predictable then, and it fosters confidence amongst the businesses, amongst policymakers and consumers as well. And the idea is to basically outline a clear incremental tax adjustment plan that, over several years, could be 3 years, could be 5 years. You see that, sometimes it's 3 years in certain countries, 5 years perhaps, which will help businesses to plan better and plan ahead. It will have to improve, of course, government revenue forecasting as well. You can plan ahead. The government itself knows what they can expect to earn over the years concerned. And it will, quite importantly, also, avoid market disruptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, moving on to the next question that we have when it comes to this, how would a multi-year tax calendar benefit industries with traditional high sin taxes like, for example, alcohol and also tobacco? Now, in terms of business stability and consumer price predictability.
Well, if you're talking about the industries like tobacco and the alcohol industry, and we're talking about the industry players, basically, if we have a multi-year tax calendar in place, it allows them to plan better, right? In terms of, now there's an inevitable price hike that will come about as a result of the increase in excise duties, for example. And in order to minimize the increase in their products, then as a result of that, they could perhaps plan better in terms of, sourcing for more competitively priced materials, looking at improving their processes to achieve perhaps, economies of scale, and ultimately try to manage the price hike as much as possible with the ability to look at what's going to happen, right, over the next few years. It gives them that opportunity to plan ahead, to avoid if there's a significant price hike and which will, ultimately cause a very huge price increase. That will obviously affect their financial performance, etc. as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's more to do with allowing them to plan ahead. There is the inevitable price increase, as we said, but how do we manage it as best as we can? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be their perspective.
Now, what are the key challenges faced by industries like alcohol and tobacco when tax increases significantly after years of no change? Now, who do these challenges actually impact their long-term financial plan?
Well, as mentioned, actually, the industry players would be severely impacted by this, I feel, because ultimately sin taxes will affect affordability, and therefore it will impact quite significantly, the spending habits of the consumers. And so the ability to basically manage the price increases, like we mentioned, this will affect the financial performance of the players industry. If there is a move away from purchasing the products that are produced by these legitimate taxpayers, and this will give rise to obviously cash flow problems for the industry players, will give rise to profitability issues. Their financial performances will be affected. It would also basically mean that there is quite a bit of this consumption that is then satisfied by going for, turning to illicit products, smuggled goods, etc. And we can talk a bit more about that as we go along. And ultimately, the idea is to try to find a balance, actually, because when you talk about increase of the excise duties for tobacco, for alcohol, the idea is to, from the government's perspective, I suppose, would be to also reduce the consumption, right? If you talk about tobacco, it has got its health issues and risks. So the idea is to actually reduce the consumption as far as possible. And this has worked quite well in certain countries. I've got some statistics where they talk about, in Australia, the excise rate or duty per cigarette increased from 19 cents in 1999 to about $1.16 Aussie dollars. And that's quite a huge increase. And over that period, the number of consumers 14 years and above, right, it plummeted from 22% of the population to about 11%. And so if the objective is to try to reduce the consumption, statistically this has been sort of proven by the Aussie authorities that it has worked. And they are actually planning to reduce it to 10% by 2025 and bring it down further to 5% consumption in 2030. So, but all these are also done in a bit of a planned manner, gradual increases over the years that are taking place.
So I would also figure that when it comes to, based on the Australian statistics, if you don't mind, does it work here in Malaysia? Based on your own observation, do you think it's working here, or?
Well, I think
because we have our own way of dealing with issues just like this. Like our attitudes in Australia is totally different from us here in Malaysia.
Yes,
our characteristics are different, so behavior can be different as well. So, what do you think? Your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, it's a really good point, because in order to have a reduced consumption, the other channels of obtaining these products, the illicit products, the smuggling activities, the curtailing of such activities, obviously is very important, right? Because as the products prices go up, if the smuggling activities are not curtailed, not curbed, not managed, then it is really going to be a double whammy, right? You're not going to achieve that stated objective of reducing consumption, but and then you're going to lose government revenues, right? The legitimate players that are producing products that are so-called safe, as far as possible, right? That is, they're going to be affected financially. The government is going to lose a lot of tax revenue, and this is going to then just be, counterproductive, right, ultimately for the country.
Moving on to our next question. From an economic perspective, how do sudden and significant tax increases actually influence consumer behavior, particularly in terms of shifting towards illicit products?
Well, as mentioned, as we discussed a little while ago as well, when it comes to there being a sudden hike in the prices, and it cannot be managed by the industry players, it's going to cause a huge price increase in the product itself, right? The tobacco products, the alcohol products. And so there will be this tendency to go for the illicit products, right? And again, I think in 2015, there was a 43% increase in the excise rate for tobacco, and this caused an increase in the market, growth, if you could say, for the illicit market, right, to grow from about 37% to 53% within a year, right? So when you have such a significant increase, and you do not have sufficient measures to control, to curtail the illegal activities, then this is the result of that, right? So you find a huge surge in the consumption of the usage of illicit products.
I do believe that enforcement, particularly in this year, has been quite enforcing, and a lot of these illicit items have been
confiscated.
Has been confiscated. And I do believe that with the budget 2025, I think it is going to be much more beneficial when it comes to enforcement. So back to your question with regards to that, when it comes to consumer behavior going to the illicit
products.
Might not benefit them.
In fact, you are absolutely right, because I think there's been this renewed, initiative by the government, by the Customs Department, to really try to curb and try to flush out these smuggling activities. And they're quite serious about it.
It's a huge, actually, blow to those who actually are in this illicit market. Well, there we go. So we are going to discuss more on today's little topic, so stay tuned, and there's much more to discuss, but we're going to go for a little short break with our guest for today. Stick around.
2025 will be a momentous chapter for ASEAN, rich with significance and promise. Will mark the 10th anniversary of the ASEAN community founding, a milestone in our collective journey. Malaysia has chosen the theme inclusivity and sustainability. It reflects our aspirations for shared progress, ensuring that no one is left behind. It conveys our hope that the steps we take today will endure in the long run. It underscores our determination to keep the future firmly in sight as we move forward. On behalf of the government and people of Malaysia, I look forward to welcoming you all. Selamat datang ke Malaysia. Thank you.
Welcome back. Mr. Harvinder Singh, there are currently so much things I would like to ask you, but let's start off with something quite very close to home here. Could the implementation of a multi-layer tax calendar reduce the incidences of illicit trade in heavily taxed industries? Now, what are the potential economic impacts and of such shifts?
Otto, actually, I think it is going to assist, obviously, the industry players to plan and manage the cost better, as we've discussed. And so the affordability of the products itself can be managed. And to switch to illicit products will then be reduced somewhat. And illicit trade itself, as we discussed, needs to be handled and curbed. And obviously, if there's an alternative for consumers that is cheaper, then they will naturally be attracted by cheaper products. That's the consumer behavior that we have. And then the availability of such products will have to be managed, right? And the potential economic impact is, as we discussed, is quite significant. Reduced revenues for registered taxpayers, the corporate parties that are actually plying the trade. Revenues will be lost to the shadow market. As it is, we have got, in terms of compliance levels in Malaysia, whether you talk about direct taxes, income taxes, or, when it comes to indirect taxes as well, the compliance levels are not at the desired level. They need to be improved, significantly. So this would basically mean that we are losing revenues to the shadow market that has to be managed. And it will also reduce funds obviously for public spending, and the monies that can be earned from these excise duties, if managed and introduced gradually and moderately, can be planned or could be earmarked for public health spending, for example, or to have campaigns on anti-smoking and those sort of things. So the funds will not be there, will be lost to the shadow market who are not reporting the taxes, and they become, I suppose, even bolder than ever before, right?
Now, how might a predictable multi-year tax schedule influence the government's overall tax revenue from industries like alcohol and tobacco? Would this approach actually offer a more reliable revenue stream?
I believe it would, because this approach, it's already in use in some countries, and it can help manage tax increases in a more moderate way, mitigating the need for huge price hikes, and maintaining a steady stream of government revenue, right, to support the economic and public welfare initiatives. And I think in Cambodia, for example, where they have this multi-year calendar in place, they expect over 5 years, with the introduction of this 5-year plan, the government revenues to increase by USD 230 million or so. So there is a potential, ability to sort of forecast what you're going to earn. It might not be exactly that. It might be a little bit more or a little bit less, but it gives you an idea of where the revenues are going to perhaps come from in the future.
And that's very important. Just like you said, the economy over there is like booming because of one of the reasons is this multi-year tax schedule.
Yeah.
Now, what potential social and economic consequences should the government consider when planning tax increases for industries with products that have a high elasticity of demand, such as tobacco and alcohol?
Yeah, so when we talk about high elasticity of demand, basically means that if there is a change in the price, it will affect the quantity of demand or the demand for the good itself. So here, if you talk about an increase in the price of the tobacco or alcohol products, it will reduce the demand because of the price consideration.
Yep.
So, basically, consumers will look for cheaper alternatives, right? Economically, affects the revenues of all the industry players, the government. And I think it's also important to, which I think currently perhaps is not really perhaps looked at or needs to be managed in Malaysia, is we talked about earmarking, right? The sin taxes that are being collected, right? They should be earmarked for perhaps public health programs, cancer awareness, perhaps initiatives, because tobacco does give rise to give effect to perhaps cancer, cause of cancer, one of the causes of cancer. So it can be used for purposes of creating this awareness, public health programs, to basically look at that. In Philippines, in Ghana and Philippines, I've got this sort of statistics that earmarking for health has made it possible to launch or expand the National Health Insurance Program, right, in Ghana and Philippines. And in South Africa, they use this excise duty sin tax to basically manage the HIV pandemic that they had. And at least 80 countries around the world have earmarking for health. And more than 30 countries use tobacco for this particular purpose, right? So there is a consensus about the strong potential role of earmark taxes, right, on tobacco and alcohol in helping to finance health programs. So, like I said, in the context of Malaysia, the current practice of imposing duties is to raise a bit of government revenue and also to try to reduce the consumption of some of these so-called sin products, if you like.
But I do believe that throughout the years that we have acknowledged through these taxes, it has been going up in a very slow pace, because I do believe that the government also empathizes with the citizens of Malaysia as well. aside from slow taxation towards this, it's also in part of the education where the Ministry of Health also pitches in to educate the citizens on the dangers of excessive use of these illicit products. So I do believe that we're moving towards the right direction. And in that case as well, Mr. Harvinder Singh, will technology actually play a role in this? Now, aside that we've already discussed when it comes to the taxation, multi-year taxation schedule, talking about the human behavior as well, from Australia to Cambodia to Malaysia, even the multifacets of agencies that are involved in this.
Yeah.
How does technology play a role in helping in this context?
Well, technology is these days, I mean, it's widespread, it's there. There's nothing that I think works without technology. And in terms of obviously getting the message across, doing some sort of, when you talk about earmarking, doing statistical analysis, etc., technology plays a part in that as well. So the utilization of technology for purposes of enhancing the awareness of, we talk about the risk aspects of, tobacco and alcohols consumption. I think the public awareness, right, can be enhanced with the use of technology for sure, right? And whilst we may not have seen, just going back to what you mentioned earlier, this hike for some time now, or significant hike in the excise duties, I think the alcohol industry has not seen a rise in excise duties for some time. And sometimes there's the worry that, there might be a sudden hike. So this is where we're coming from to say that do not do that, try not to do that. Try to have a multi-year tax calendar that makes it predictable, for better planning for the industry players, and to try to manage the affordability, right, of these products as well. And I think we've been talking or focusing a little bit on sin taxes, right? But I think the overall idea for multi-year tax calendars would also extend to other areas of taxation. If we talk about income taxes, personal taxes, corporate taxes, right? So every year we are sort of left guessing whether there'll be a reduction of the corporate tax rate or reduction of the personal tax rate. And this perhaps is also something that can be looked at, right, on a multi-year calendar basis. If there's going to be a reduction or increase of taxes, I think at the moment the idea would be to try to reduce direct taxes as much as possible and increase consumption taxes. So we've seen over the last few years an increase in the scope of service tax to generate revenues, right, for the government. There has been a discussion about the need to bring back GST, right, consumption taxes, so that we can increase. But I think, as mentioned by the PM in last year's budget 2025, announced last year, that we would not probably see GST being reintroduced until the minimum wage goes up to about 3,000 to 4,000 to maintain the affordability. So I think that's like probably saying that GST is not going to be around for a while.
I see.
Yeah, but to compensate, then they are looking at how to expand the scope of service taxes. Right? So again, all this, if there is a planned increase or expansion, with a clear directive or direction, maybe, right? That is part of the overall scheme of things that can be looked at as well.
You've been in the tax industry for more than 3 decades already. Have you seen any reactive taxation throughout the years in your experience? And has it actually affected significantly our tax revenue and everything around it?
I think when you say reactive, typically looking at the circumstances or particular needs of the country, there may have been tweaking or introduction of certain taxes, etc. In terms of, I think one significant reactive measure was in 1999 when we moved from the we call it the preceding year basis of taxation to the current year basis of taxation. And this was on the back of the financial crisis, Asian financial crisis of 1998. So companies that may have made monies by 97, up to 97, or maybe, up to 97, I would say, because 98 was fully into the crisis. They were not in a position to pay taxes, right, by the time it came to tax reporting because of the financial crunch that took place. So it moved on to a current year basis, and also where you pay taxes as you earn, right, as you go along. So while we talk about multi-year tax calendar and to avoid reactive measures, I suppose in an ideal world, and that's what we always try to achieve, right? Idealism. Right? In an ideal world, it would be, I think, probably a good idea to have a multi-year tax calendar in place. And then if there is a need to tweak and change when there is exceptional situation or circumstance that requires that, then that can be handled and can be managed as well.
That's also very important as well, handling it in an ideal world.
Yes.
Before we end, we have one more question. So how will you ensure transparency throughout the process of implementing tax policies before we end?
Wow. Well, I think the tax authorities have become very, very they take the initiative to be very transparent and very clear with taxpayers on, the policies that are being implemented. For example, it's for a very long time now, we've got public rulings that are issued by the IRB on what the expectation is on a particular tax issue. If you talk about entertainment expenses that are to be claimed, so it's made it very clear as to what's the expectation, as to what's deductible, what's not deductible. If we talk about withholding taxes, right, under what circumstances, if you're talking about payment of royalty, is it subject to withholding tax or not? So they've got their views on this. They make it transparent, and we may or may not agree with some of these views. So we have this very fruitful, discussions, brainstorming sessions to look at how. So they are also open to suggestions and discussions, right?
And that's very important.
On improvement of the systems and how to make things more transparent. I was talking about service tax. It was expanded in scope for the logistics services last year. But in the implementation of it, there were a lot of problems that were faced because there are so many players in the value chain, and there is a cascading effect of service tax. So this year they've expanded it to financial sort of arrangements, between corporate entities, and they have invited the industry players to come in and to share with them on how to make sure that we can implement it much more efficiently.
Okay.
And so they're willing to learn, and it's a very open attitude that we see from the authorities, which is fantastic.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mr. Harvinder Singh. We have not much time, but thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
And that's all about the time that we have for this evening's On the Table. And we'll be speaking to Mr. Harvinder Singh, a council member of Chartered Tax Institute of Malaysia. Now, a repeat of this episode's broadcast can be viewed again at the same time tomorrow and subsequent days on both RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel, as well as Berita RTM YouTube channel. Now, till next Thursday, we'll discuss another topic of interest. I'm Otto Othman, signing off.